saturated fat has been shown to do that. In fact, the more saturated fat you eat, the more... Hi friends, someone forwarded me this shorts on 10 simple tips to reduce blood sugar levels put up by Levels Health. So I thought it would be fun to see what other people had to say.
Have a savory breakfast, not a sweet one.
That's a really interesting way to get unhooked from the sweet taste of food, to convert everything to savory. That's really how I started eating less and less sweet foods, is that I started incorporating more savory foods and more spices. And when I have more spices, I don't miss the sugar or the fat as much. I think it just occupies my palate and occupies my mind, trying to tolerate the heat. So it takes my mind off of the sweetness of food as well as the saltiness and fattiness of food. So I've been incorporating a lot of spices to make my foods more savory. However, I've grown up with savory breakfasts. My favorite breakfast was dim sum. And if you've ever eaten at a dim sum restaurant, you know that that's not food that's going to correct your blood sugar metabolism. So there is a difference between blood sugar metabolism and high blood sugar. They don't always go together. So if you are ruining your blood sugar metabolism, you will only see the high blood sugar if you eat foods with sugar or starches, basically carbohydrates that you can digest. And if you are ruining your blood sugar metabolism and you avoid carbohydrates, then you never see that, right? So the only time you see the problem with blood sugars is when you combine eating carbohydrates with foods that actually mess up your blood sugar metabolism. And those foods are basically fatty foods, saturated fat, whether you eat that or you're eating excessive calories and converting that into fat. Either way, gets you this carbohydrate metabolism imbalance or the inability to process carbohydrates. So to fix that, it's really the quality of your food. So let me show you my breakfast. This is what I have. It's basically a bowl of grain and I put a couple of dates in like a pot. So it's barely sweet. And then I have some blueberries. And to some people, this is considered a sweet breakfast, even though it actually doesn't really taste sweet. The blueberries kind of make it sweeter. Here, let me show you with my phone. Okay, I have quinoa, I have barley, I have pumpkin seeds, I have almond seeds, and I have blueberries in it. I actually eat this for breakfast, I eat it for lunch, or I eat it for dinner. Now, the benefit of eating this kind of breakfast meal or your carbohydrates in the morning is that you are actually most insulin sensitive in the morning. So your breakfast, if you want to eat a carbohydrate load, especially if you want to eat a junky carbohydrate load, it's actually beneficial to front load that during the day because your insulin resistance actually gets worse and worse throughout the day, right? So in the morning, that's when, if you want to eat your carbs, that's when to do it. Now, for many people, it would be a high carb meal. But in general, this is a low glycemic index meal because even though it's high in carbs, because I have whole grains and I have whole fruits, and this is a very high fiber meal. I have some nuts because I want the fat. The rest of it doesn't have a lot of fat. There's no plant that has no fat, but I want a little bit of the good fats from the almond, the pumpkin seed, and I want the nutrient density of these foods. So I can convert this into a savory breakfast by putting spices, or I can just eat it as is. And to me, it would be kind of sort of sweet, but not really sweet tasting. So it's really the quality of your food. So if you have a savory breakfast like eggs and bacon and sausage, well, you're not going to see the carb rise, but you'll get more insulin resistance. And this has been proven a long time ago, where fat is really the culprit of making your carbohydrate metabolism worse. Basically, fat, then protein. And they've done this in studies in which they've tested healthy, normal people, and they separated medical students into 4 groups. One got no food, one had a high fat meal, one had a high protein meal, and one had a high carbohydrate meal. And the unique thing about this study is that the carbohydrate meal wasn't like good quality carbs. It gave them junky carbs, processed, highly refined carbs that don't taste sweet, like bread. Many people, unless you put sugar in it, bread doesn't taste sweet, but it gets converted into straight sugar. The issue is that a lot of these grains can be converted to bread, but if I eat it in bread form, then that would be metabolically more destructive to my insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance than if I ate it whole grain form. So this is why I avoid cereals and I avoid bread, because it's not health food. I'll eat some of it sometimes as a treat because, when you totally personally don't eat any of that. If you're okay with it, I think that's great. But sometimes my family has it and I feel like eating a couple bites. I'll eat a couple bites, but I'll leave it alone. I know it's like dessert for me. I'll taste it, but I don't actually fill up in it. And so that study, what's unique about that study is that it showed the ones who ate the junky carbs basically had better blood sugar levels than the ones who ate the high fat diet or the protein diet. And they did this by challenging them with dextrose, with sugar. And you won't know unless you challenge your body with sugar. So this is why omnivores struggle with blood sugar control, because they're eating both carbs and fat and protein. Whereas, if you're on a carnivore diet, you never see the carbs, so you never see the glucose metabolism problems. And if you're eating a high carb diet, like there's a lot of people online who eat high carb diets, basically in general, there's a lot of people around the world, billions of people around the world eat a high carb diet. They're basically plant-based because plants are cheap to eat and that's what they can afford. And they don't have the diabetes, obesity, cholesterol issues. And this is because when you eat whole food plants, nature, basically God, already perfected to control your metabolism. It's the fiber. Everything is wrapped up in fiber as opposed to adding individual fibers. When you add individual fibers, it's like shredded wrapping paper. It doesn't protect your present, right? And the presents are the jewels and nutrients inside these foods. And so if you want to access these nutrients, basically the carbs, the proteins, and the fats, and not have it destroy your metabolism or make us insulin resistant, then eating it in whole food form is the key, whether you eat a sweet or savory breakfast. Because technically, pizza is also a savory breakfast. Some people eat that. And if we're just following the savory versus sweet rule, we're not going to find quality food, right? It's really the key is having quality food that automatically fills us up, because when we eat quality food, basically the fiber fills us up, the water, the hydration fills us up and automatically shuts off our appetite to eat more food. It's really all about the quality of food that will get us good glucose metabolism. And you can prove that by challenging yourself with glucose. If you don't ever eat glucose, then you'll never know if you have a glucose intolerance metabolism issue.
Start your meals with vegetables. Never.
I absolutely agree with that. Normally this is actually my second meal. Well, this is a part of a meal. Normally I eat a breakfast salad because I just can't get enough greens in my daily meal. I have to juice it if I don't chew it. And so I will always start every meal with vegetables because they are the least caloric foods, right? And they contain the most nutrient density, but they are the tasteless foods. So you have to figure out how you're going to enjoy eating them. And the way my children eat, I just keep telling them it's not enough for your health. It's great that you eat more than your friends, but for your personal health, you're just going to have to blend it and drink it. And for the longest time, my kids were really resistant to that. And then they finally realized that they just won't chew enough of it. So now they just drink a shake. And there's nothing wrong with blending vegetables. It's when you extract the fiber and then you just drink the juice that you can overconsume fruit juices. And when you're buying processed fruit juice, well, they're processing it. They're adding concentrated sugar of some sort. And that's why that messes up people's glucose metabolism issues.
Never eat sugar on an empty stomach. Always.
Oh, I agree with that. That is such good advice. Never eat sugar on an empty stomach. Now, this blueberry, right? Lots of people think it's sugary. It's really not that sweet. There's not a lot of sugar compared to all the other nutrients that you're getting and the water and the fiber. I eat fruit because I'll never eat that separate from the fiber and the water. So I don't consider eating fruit eating sugar on an empty stomach because fruit is not the same as sugar. Many people confuse the two because we add sugar to a lot of fruits, right? Like apple pie or strawberry jams or raspberry preserve. Those are not fruit. Those are sugar, right? With some fruit flavor in it. You're basically eating a ton of sugar and you're just flavoring it with fruit. But if you don't eat sugar on an empty stomach, then what you're doing is you're inhibiting the neuronal release of dopamine to get you to eat more and more sugar. And if you swallow other things before you eat that sugar, like let's say sour foods, bitter foods, you change your taste buds to appreciate less sugar. My son had a friend from Switzerland that came recently and he drank a shake. It was actually an In-N-Out out shake, and he couldn't believe how sweet the shake was. And all the desserts he ate here were super sweet. It's because our palate is trained for sugar. The more sugar you eat, the more you want, and the less sweet the food tastes, right? It's kind of like coffee and caffeine. The more coffee you drink, the more caffeine you need in order to have that wake up and to be alert. And that's because you get tolerant to that sugar level. Same thing with salt. But you can train yourself to go backwards by learning to eat bitter and sour foods. And if you pair it with bitter and sour, because normally bitter and sour are naturally aversion foods, right? Because in nature, if it's bitter or sour, there's usually some poison, like maybe it's spoiled. And so we're trained to not secrete hormones and neurotransmitters to get us to eat more of those foods. We actually have the opposite effect. So if you can pair it with sour and bitter foods, then slowly you'll train your palate out of craving for really, really high sugary refined foods. And that's honestly what I did because I was very much addicted to sugar as well. So I stopped eating plain sugar on an empty stomach, and I would only eat it after I've had a meal or had a full snack that included lots of fresh vegetables and fruit. And if I still felt like I needed that sugar at the end of my fruit binge, then I would eat it. And I wouldn't need as much of it. I wouldn't have to fill up on it.
Always as dessert after a meal. After you...
That's right. Sugary sweet foods should be dessert. You know, in Asia, people eat basically fruit as dessert. That is their dessert. They don't manipulate it. They don't put stuff on it, right? In America, they have to dress this up, do something with it. I'm not sure why, because the fruit to me tastes like perfect food.
After you eat, use your muscles for 10 minutes, go for a 10-minute walk, have some...
That's an excellent idea. 10-minute walking is an excellent idea. Actually, it's been shown that if you just spend 2 minutes walking, that you can significantly reduce your blood sugar levels, right? So after every meal, every sugar bolus, every carbohydrate bolus, I would advise everybody to do that. Like I try to do that. And I've noticed my blood sugars actually are so much better controlled if I do that. And if I don't do that, you know, you'll have your spikes. Everybody's blood sugar goes up after they eat, but it's really not important how high you spike. Nobody can agree on that number. It's really how long you are having elevated blood sugars for, right? And so if you do it the right way, then your blood sugars will take a dive faster. If we do it the wrong way, then we have this prolonged blood sugar, continuous blood sugar rise over time. And that's actually much more harmful than any blood sugar spike after eating carbs.
Have some vinegar, dilute it in water before a meal.
The vinegar diluted in water, vinegar actually does help reduce blood sugar levels. It actually activates cyclic AMP levels in our cells, so it revs up our metabolism. That's how it works. I don't advocate drinking vinegar because some people, I know lots of people who actually drink it like a shot, and you basically burn your esophagus. I mean, you're pouring acid down your esophagus. That's never a good thing because your esophagus is very, very thin. It's not supposed to have acid. You know, when people get acid reflux in their esophagus, they get esophagitis. And the esophagitis can become a Barrett's esophagitis, which is a pre-cancerous condition to esophageal cancer. I usually eat my vinegar with my food. So with every meal, I just have learned to pour on, I like balsamic vinegar because I like the polyphenols, that rich black, purple, deep color. I'm just getting more nutrients when I put on that vinegar. And you can do it with apple cider vinegar, white vinegar. It really, all different kind of vinegars can actually be helpful to help lower blood sugar control. But ultimately, it's what you're pouring the vinegar onto, right? That's the main point. The quality of your food should start with high quality ingredients, whole food, and then you'll have definitely much better blood sugar control, even if you don't use a vinegar.
Put clothing on your carbs, have a savory snack instead of a sweet one, etc.
A savory snack. You know, I consider fruit to be a sweet snack. I love fruit. It has been shown that people who eat more fruit actually have better blood sugar control as well as lower cholesterol. They have a big bowel movement. They lose more weight. I mean, there's just an enormous amount of benefit from eating whole food fruits that's not been adulterated. But if we're talking about sweet snacks like energy bars, fruit leathers, fruit preserves or fruit apple pies or those things like fruit gummies, those are not fruit, right? Those are processed foods. So it's really the quality of your food. If you have the wrong savory snack, and as I mentioned in the beginning, if you're eating a high fat savory snack, a snack that is high in saturated fat especially, that can actually make your glucose metabolism worse. Now, there's lots of people on the internet who say, don't worry about fat. I respectfully disagree. I don't go for fat-free items. These are not fat-free. There's fat in whole foods, right? You can't go zero. In nature, there's nothing that's natural that's zero fat. However, fat and sugar can't be processed at the same time, and your body does this on purpose. So sugar metabolism is a form of quick energy, and you need that in order to like run away from a lion or a bear. But fat metabolism, that's a little bit slower energy, right? There's much more conversion to get into the biochemical pathway to make ATP. So when you need it quick, right, then you're going to turn off your reserves because you really don't want to tap into both energies. It's kind of like, you have a checking account, then you have a rainy day savings fund, right? You withdraw from your checking account, but if you withdraw from your savings fund, then you're going to be like really have nothing to use, right? So this is the same thing that our body does. It's normally programmed to do that. So when there's a presence of fat, it tells the body you have a surplus of food, a surplus of energy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to slow down the quick energy, right? Because if you have all this surplus energy, why do you need so much quick energy? So saturated fat has been shown to do that. In fact, the more saturated fat you eat, the more fat you get inside your muscles, the more fat you get inside your pancreas. And it's been proven through MRI imaging that the more fat you have inside your pancreas, the more harmful that fat is to your pancreas, where then you can't secrete insulin to meet your glucose demands. At the same time, your muscles are your number one metabolic buffer. It buffers not only your sugar, but also your fat, and it's a source of water. So we have the ability to increase our muscle mass, and that is with exercise. The more we exercise, the bigger our muscle mass. But just like the specialty cows from Japan, where they have intramyocellular lipid, where they basically feed them, a certain ratio of nutrients to get that fat to accumulate in their muscle to create that, mouth feel where that muscle just kind of melts in your mouth as you eat it, right? That's what's happening to people when they see symptoms of insulin resistance, right? They're accumulating fat in the wrong places. And this is why it's important to change the quality of food and not just think of it as savory or sweet, but really you can enjoy either one. It's just mostly what type of food are you starting with? Are you starting with processed food? Are you starting with high saturated fat food? Or are you starting with good quality core foods? So I think her overall tips are fairly good, except for a couple things that I would tweak. And if you want to know more tips on how you can improve your glucose metabolism, watch the next video.